everyone, welcome back to Williamson Ridge Outdoors. Today, I just want to talk about something that happened. Maybe give you a few pointers and stuff to try to keep it from happening to you. Back sometime, I ran over my Echo CS590 with my tractor. Now, that seems like, how in the world do you do something like that? Especially me, I'm extremely cautious with where I place my chainsaw at. Now, I have a box that I've built for the back of the tractor that when I'm using the tractor for firewood purposes, and I've got that box on there, then it has a chainsaw holder on it. I always put the chainsaw in that holder, but if I don't have that firewood box on there, then I don't have my chainsaw holder, so then I'm kind of forced to set it down on the ground somewhere. Let's talk a little bit about a few tips that you can do to keep your chainsaw in a safe place, or maybe some other options in order to keep your chainsaw safe. I'll show you here in just a second the damages and stuff that it caused on mine and kind of go over that with you, but let's talk about where not to put your chainsaw. You know, if you're out working, you're cutting firewood and all that kind of stuff, and you're using your tractor, I mean, it's one thing if you don't have any other equipment there and it's just you and your chainsaw or whatever, but, you know, whenever I go out and get firewood, I've always got my tractor. Do not set your saw down in the trail or in a wide open area. You know, the reason for it, you'd think, well, you can see it if it's in a wide open area, but the wide open area is typically the place that you're going to be operating your tractor. Well, it's going to be most of the time in the wide open area. So if your chainsaw is in that wide open area, then it is really in the danger zone. So what I like to do is always try to find a place to where you can set the saw down next to something. So if you're working in an area where you've got trees down and you've got pieces of firewood sitting out, set your saw up next to something like this, because more than likely you're not going to be backing over a big piece of wood like this. If you've got trees over in the edge, like I work out of a trail a lot of times where, you know, I'll have the tractor up on the trail and then I've got, of course, trees over on the sides, and maybe I'll go over and get a tree from just off the trail a little ways. You set it next to a tree, something that you can't run over with your tractor. Always remember, don't set it over in a brush pile. You know, you want to be able to find your saw, but always remember to try to put it in a safe zone or next to something. And that should help eliminate you running over your saw with a piece of equipment. So always remember that. You know, when you think about a safe zone, you think a wide open area that you can see something, but that's not necessarily the case when you're running a piece of equipment, because it's going to be in that wide open area all the time. In my case, I actually set my saw way back away, but it was still in a clearing. And I thought, I'll never have the tractor that far back, or I'll never be that far, you know, where the saw is sitting at. Lo and behold, I felt myself running over top of something. You know, the tractor tips up on, you know, goes up, kind of feels like it's going out of balance, and because you're in a wide open place, you're like, what in the world am I running over? I look down and see that I ran over my chainsaw. Shocked. So that's been a long time ago, and the reason it has is because kind of backwards about telling people that I ran over my chainsaw. It just sounds like a stupid thing to do. But no matter how cautious you are and how aware you are of your surroundings, it can still happen. I knew where my saw was at. I knew that I set it out of the way, and I'm extremely cautious and always making sure that I set it out of the way. But it was in the way that time, and I ran over it. So luckily, we got off pretty easy on it. My tractor weighs right about 8,000 pounds, and I ran over it with the back tires. I can't believe that the saw wasn't just demolished, but I'll show you what it did to it. So we ended up getting pretty lucky with our saw, in that it broke the chain brake, and it still functions. It's not, it didn't make it to where it doesn't function. It still does for now. I do need to fix it so that it's, you know, not flopping and banging around, but, you know, it still does function. The handle actually was folded. That was turned white because of the stress in the plastic, but it actually has changed back to black. And really, you know, that's really not too much damage because the handle went back into place. The chain brake, like I say, still functions. The biggest damage that it did to it, which you really can't see the damage, but if you notice this wet sawdust on here, right underneath this handle actually attaches to the gas tank, and that much stress on that plastic gas tank caused it to crack right in that area underneath this handle. So when you have the saw turned up on its side, then it actually will leak out of that little crack just a little bit, which is what this is from. So when you get sawdust on it, then that gas and oil starts soaking up, and you get that. It's not the safest thing in the world because you are leaking fuel out of it, but it's a very little amount. It doesn't pour out or anything like that. It's just kind of eases out or oozes out just a little bit and causes that to kind of get wet around through there as it soaks up the sawdust. As long as you're not cutting with it turned onto this side, it doesn't leak. If you're sitting upright, like if you're cutting your rounds, it doesn't leak out. And if you're turned on the side that we just had it where the pull starter is, it doesn't leak. If you got it turned on this side is where you'll see the leak at. I don't know if you can see it, but right around the handle there, it just got wet again from me turning it over. And you can fill the tank up full and it still doesn't leak unless you lean it over onto that side, which actually, I don't know if you can see this, but there's a little tiny stress crack right here, and that goes into that gas tank, and it just barely oozes out of there. So I ended up coming out of this, you know, pretty easy. I didn't have to replace my saw. I did check on parts and stuff to see how much replacing the gas tank and all that kind of stuff was, which the downside to that is you can't just replace the tank. It was like a tank and trigger and, you know, like the whole assembly, and it was about $125. So you're getting about a quarter of the price of the saw, and that's if you change it out yourself. If you have to take it somewhere and have them change the tank, the trigger assembly and all that stuff, you know, then you're probably looking close to $200, including labor, maybe even more than that. And you're looking at, that's half the price of the saw. So I was debating on, you know, it's like, do I keep using it where, you know, where it's at and just deal with it leaking a little bit of fuel? As long as it doesn't get real bad, then I should be fine. So that's what I've done so far. And this has been, I believe it was last fall that I ran over this. Like I say, it's been a while back. I just didn't want to tell nobody about it, or at least too much. But I figured that it might be a helpful thing to try to help keep somebody else from running over theirs. Always remember just to set your saw somewhere, you know, next to something that you can't run over. And if you set it out in a wide open area where you can see it, you'll probably run over it. There are other methods, you know, to keeping your saw safe. I've seen some mounts that go on your tractor. I've seen mounts that go on, you know, like a UTV or something like that. I don't have any of that other than the one that I made on my firewood box, and that day didn't have that on my tractor. So ended up running over it. And like I say, I've always been extremely cautious about where I place my equipment at and try to keep up with it because it's really important to me. And, you know, I love to take care of my equipment and try to always maintain it and then take care of it by not damaging it and doing crazy things with it. But I did. I ran over it, and it, you know, that kind of stuff happens. So anyways, I'll have to say, though, that our Echo CS 590 is pretty resilient considering an 8,000-pound tractor ran over it. It didn't run over, you know, a simple part of it. It ran over the entire engine casing and the handle and had the full weight of the tractor sitting on top of it. And it survived it. It's still usable. You know, it did not change the functionality of it other than it leaking a little bit of gasoline. So with that being said, I'm still using it. Haven't done any repairs to it, although I do plan on fixing that chain brake handle because I just don't like it flopping around. But it looks bad. I like my equipment to always look good, even if it's old or whatever. I like to try to make it or keep it looking the best that I can. I didn't mean to make this video this long, but I just thought I'd throw just a couple super simple tips out there to try to help others in case they have run into this themselves. So I hope this video helps somebody out. It's a simple mistake, but it happens all the time. And, you know, it can be a costly mistake. I was fortunate in, you know, that I can still use the saw and it made no difference in it other than a few little imperfections, but it still functions as it should. But a lot of times, I mean, people lose their equipment due to stuff like this. Hopefully it'll help somebody out, maybe keep them from having the same problem and costing them a lot of money. And also, yeah, I'd like to hear your comments and stuff on here too. Let me know if you've ever done this or somebody you know has ever done this. And then maybe post in the comments some tips about how to keep your equipment safe. So I'd like to hear from you. If you like videos like this, make sure you click that thumbs up button, hit the subscribe, share it with everybody you know. Thanks for watching.